When Gonzalo scared the birds, Laura is just trying to address Gonzalo. So Gonzalo is like, I have never met you before and I don't want to talk to you anymore. And actually, who is the lady here? The lady or the woman whom he has seen very beautiful and now whom he has met in the past. The beginning answer will be the same of the previous question as I've discussed or as I've explained you about Gonzalo's cousin's account to Laura. Hello everyone, I am Babita Tamaya, lecturer, Department of English, Vidhyaashram Pre-University College, the Temple of Excellence, Mysuru. In my previous session, I revised the poem on children. In my today's session, I'll be revising the play A Sunny Morning. Before I move on to the question and answers, I'll just brief a synopsis of this play. So about the play, let's see what's about the play here. A Sunny Morning revolves around Laura and Gonzalo, who in their youth were passionate lovers. A cruel blow of the fate separates the two forever. They do not recognize each other when they meet in park in Madrid on a sunny morning after several years. So here, due to the cruel blow, Laura and Gonzalo, they were separated from each other, and after several years, they have met again in the park that is in Madrid, but both of them couldn't recognize each other. But as they begin to talk in earnest, they realize that they are the protagonist of the original love story. Once they entered into the park, there was a fight between them. Later on, few words were exchanged between Laura and Gonzalo. Then they realized, yes, we were the protagonists, we were the lovers in our youth. But the usual reunion of the long-lost lovers does not take place here, as both of them are unwilling to disclose their real identity. So when the play comes to an end, both Laura and Gonzalo get to know that they are the lovers, true lovers, but they never want to disclose their identity at the end of the play, since they both are sadly changed. Now, let's see the character sketch. Donna Laura, her maid is Petra, Gonzalo, and Gonzalo's servant is Benito or Juanito. These are the four main characters in this play. The synopsis. Laura, a handsome white-haired old lady of about 70, she appears into the park with the help of the maid Petra. Leaning on her arms, holding a parasol in her hand, she enters the park. Parasol, it means to say that it's used as a walking stick or else as an umbrella. She enters into the park. When she enters into the park, she'll just search for her usual bench. Then she goes and sits there and asks Petra to go and meet her guard, because the guard will be waiting for Petra. Before she leaves, Laura asks her to give the breadcrumbs. Whenever she comes to the park, Laura comes to the park, she used to throw a handful of breadcrumbs for the pigeons over there. So she throws 3 handfuls of breadcrumbs. The first handful of breadcrumbs for the spirist, and the second handful of breadcrumbs to the gluttons, and the third one for the little ones. She throws the 3 handful of breadcrumbs. She used to feed the pigeons over there. So at that time, when she was feeding the pigeons over there, here Gonzalo enters with his servant, that is Juanito, into the park. And here Gonzalo is too very old, where he can't even walk properly. He was dragging his foot and he entered inside the park. At that time, what happened in the sense, the birds which were feeded with the breadcrumbs, they were scared and they flew away from the place. Laura gets angry because Gonzalo had scared away the birds. When Gonzalo scared the birds, Laura is just trying to address Gonzalo. So Gonzalo is like, I have never met you before and I don't want to talk to you anymore. I'm not interested to talk to you because I have not met. I don't know you properly. But Laura says, yes, but you have scared away my birds which I was feeding with my breadcrumbs. But Gonzalo says it is a public place. If so, what happens when Gonzalo enters into the park? He finds for his bench, for the usual bench where he sits every time when he enters into the park. But this time when he came to the park, his bench was occupied by the 3 priests. His bench was occupied by the priests. He had no place to sit in the parked there. He gets angry and he just asks Juanito to look around whether the priests have gone from the place. And Juanito says, no, the three priests are still sitting over there. And Gonzalo says, why the authority couldn't place some more benches, that too in this sunny morning. And then Gonzalo says, Senora, we have not met. I couldn't imagine why you take the liberty of addressing or talking to me. Gonzalo says, I don't know you. I never met you. And why do you take the liberty of talking to me or addressing me? So Laura replies, because you have scared away my birds. And the birds were fed by breadcrumbs. So Gonzalo says, this is a public property and how can you question me? So Laura says, if it is a public property, then why did you say the three priests have occupied your bench? It is a public property. Wherever they want, they can sit. And again, he replies the same thing. I don't want to talk to you. And he just asked Benito to search for the bench. There was no place. At last, what Gonzalo has to do in the sense, he has to just go and sit very next to the lady or beside the lady, that is Laura, in her bench. He just goes and sit to the extreme end of the bench and he just removes his hat by greeting Laura saying good morning. But Laura doesn't reply with a good morning. And Gonzalo says, when I greet you, when I told good morning, the reply should be good morning from your side. But she never says that. And Gonzalo says, being too very old, the only work what you have to do at your house, in the sense you can sit and do the knitting work, that's it. You cannot do any other work. She gets angry and she says, what an ill-natured man. And she'll be very happy first in the beginning because when he did not find the place. One thing, because he just scared away her birds, and she also shows a pity because he's too very old where he cannot walk and search for the bench. And at last, then Gonzalo come and sit beside Laura. So after sitting, what does Gonzalo do here? He just take out his handkerchief and start cleaning his shoe. He start brushing his shoe with the help of the handkerchief. Now Gonzalo is asking, why can't I use my handkerchief to clean my shoe? Laura says that, do you use your shoe brush as a handkerchief? Because he is using his handkerchief as a shoe brush. And now she is questioning, do you use your shoe brush as a handkerchief? Gonzalo gets wild and he says, what right do you have to criticize my actions? So the reply from Laura will be a neighbor's right, because he has come and sat next or beside Laura. So she says a neighbor's right. He gets wild on Laura and he asks, Gonzalo asks his servant Benito to hand over the book. I don't want any more conversation with this lady. Give me my book. I will start read. Laura, you're very polite. So the way he was asking, she says, you're very polite. Gonzalo, but first I shall take a pinch of snuff. So before he starts reading the book, what does he do? He just takes out a snuff box, and before he taking it, he just offer it to Laura. So what brought peace between Laura and Gonzalo? It is a pinch of snuff which made peace between Laura and Gonzalo. So before taking it, she'll ask, is it a good one? And Gonzalo says, yes, you like it. And they both take the snuff and both sneeze alternately 3 times. After that, it is a peace between Laura and Gonzalo. And then Gonzalo starts reading the book, and before reading, he'll just ask Laura, can I read the book loudly? So Laura says, yes, you can read as loud as you can. You're not going to disturb me. Then Laura questions Gonzalo, have you been to America? So Gonzalo says, yes, the first time when I went or when I visited America, I was 6 years old. So at what age he went to America? At the age of 6 years. And Gonzalo was born and brought up, and I have spent my early youth. Have you ever visited that city? Now Gonzalo is questioning Laura, have you visited that city? What is the reply from Laura? Yes, Senor. Not far from Valencia, there was a villa named Maricela. She says, yes, even I have visited America, but Not far from Valencia, there was a villa known as Maricela. So, Laura is from the place Maricela. Gonzalo, very familiar. Now, Laura is asking, is that name familiar to you? Gonzalo says, yes, very familiar. And he also says that you have remembered one of the beautiful lady of that village. There lived a beautiful woman. What her name? Now he's just trying to recall the name. He just recalls the name and he says, Laura Laurenti. What was the name of that beautiful woman there or the beautiful girl? It is Laura Laurenti. When he says Laura Laurenti, here Laura will be startled. Startled in the sense she'll be shocked to hear the name. Next, Laura, she was called the Silver Maiden. And Laura also says, yes, even I know the beautiful lady over that village that is in Maricela. And she was known as the Silver Maiden for each and everyone in the locality. She was known as Silver Maiden. Gonzalo, he just described her beauty here. She was as fair as lily, jet black hair and black eyes. Her figure was beautiful and perfect. He just described about that beautiful woman whom he has seen in that villa. And actually, who is the lady here? The lady or the woman whom he has seen very beautiful and now whom he has met in the park, it is none other than Laura herself. But after several years, at the age of 70, they both have met once again in the park, but they couldn't recognize each other. But Laura gets a doubt on the person because when he has taken the name Laura Laurenti. Laura, she was very unfortunate and had a love affair. So when he says about Laura Laurenti, now Laura is saying, yes, she had an unfortunate, sad love affair. Gonzalo, yes, the gallant lover. Huh? Laura, huh, the duel. So Gonzalo says, yes, the gallant lover. Who is the gallant lover according to Gonzalo? It is Gonzalo's cousin. He says, yes, he is the gallant lover and it was a duel. What is the duel here? Gonzalo says, the gallant lover is my cousin. Now Laura is questioning, did you say your cousin too? Laura says, oh yes, my friend told me in one of her letters the story of that affair. So now Gonzalo saying his own story has his cousin and Laura is telling her own story has a friend. So how Laura got to know about the story? That is from her friend. And her friend had written a letter. From that letter, she got to know that they both had a sad love affair, which was truly romantic. Your cousin, passed on the horseback every morning down the rose path. So what does Laura says about the gallant lover in the sense? Yes, my friend has told me every morning the gallant lover would pass on the horseback down the rose path under her window and he tossed a bouquet of flowers to her balcony. So what does the gallant lover do? Every morning when he passes under the rose path, he used to toss a bouquet of flowers to her and she would be standing near her window near the balcony. And later in the afternoon, what happens? When the gallant lover would return back in the same path, she used to toss the bouquet of flowers to him. So after that, what happened in the sense here? Donna, Laura's parent, wanted her to get married to a merchant where Laura was not willing to marry. One night, what happened in the sense? Gonzalo's cousin comes to meet Laura to listen her sing. At the same time, a merchant was over there. So his cousin and the merchant had a very bad fight. In the fight, the merchant was badly wounded and the merchant was the wanted person for that village. So after the duel, what happened in the sense? His cousin was scared. He was feared of the consequences. So he just went from the place and he came and hid in my house. That is what Gonzalo says. The merchant was badly wounded. My cousin had to conceal himself for a few days. Conceal in the sense, my cousin has to hide himself for a few days and later he flew from there. Laura, And was it you by any chance would advise your cousin to forget Laura? So Laura is questioning, because of all this, did you tell your cousin to forget Laura? So Gonzalo says, no. Why? My cousin never forgot her. So what will be the reply from Gonzalo? Gonzalo says, my cousin never forgot her. The young man took refuge in my house. Who's the young man here? The young man is Gonzalo's cousin, as he says the story. The young man took refuge in my house. He wrote many letters, believing his love lost to him forever, and then he joined the army and met with a glorious death. So, while dying, he'll just holds the flag of the Spain and he whispers his beloved name Laura Laurenti. This was the story told by Gonzalo about his cousin. So Laura says, my friend also waited for days. When he says the reply, that he gives the answer for Laura, that his cousin has never forgotten her friend. But Laura says, even my friend was waiting. She never received any letters for days, months and years. Then she wrote his beloved name on the sand and then sat down upon the rock and slowly swept up to the rock out to the sea. This is what she says. So both gets to know whatever the story they are saying about her friend and his cousin, it is totally a lie. But they doesn't want to disclose their identity to each other because they both have a doubt that he is the one whom I loved and she is the one whom I loved a lot in my youth. Gonzalo, in 3 months, I ran off to Paris with a ballet dancer, and Laura, I will not tell him that I married 2 years later. After exchanging these words, now Laura is questioning, are you going to come to this park tomorrow? So Gonzalo says, yes, if it is a sunny morning, surely I am going to come, and when I come, I'll come with some breadcrumbs. And here they were about to depart from the park, and Laura was waiting for her maid Petra. Petra enters into the park with a bouquet of violet flowers in her hand. So who had given? The guard has given the violet flowers to Laura. While just taking or collecting the violet flowers, what Laura does in the sense, she just drops few flowers. Now, Gonzalo's servant Benito also have come. Now both are departing from the park. When Laura was about to move from the park with her maid, she just turns back and see, and she will be shocked to see that Laura is picking those flowers, that is the fallen flowers from her hand. And she will say that yes, he is the one whom I liked. And he also gets to know, yes, she is the one. But till the end, they'll never want to disclose their identity. But at last, before they move away from the park, they both look at each other and they'll just go back to their youth, remembering about the gallant lover, that he is passing on the horseback on the rose path and she is near her balcony and he is tossing a bouquet of flowers and she is tossing back to him. Thinking of that, both depart from the park. That is about the synopsis or the story or the play of a sunny morning. From this chapter, you can expect 2 questions for 1 marks and 2 questions for 4 marks. Because as I told you in my first session or first revision class, that the question paper pattern has been changed. I mean to say that not the pattern, the number of questions has been increased. So from this chapter, you can expect 2 1-mark question and 2 4 marks question. Now it's time to discuss the 1-mark question answers. Who is Don Gonzalo and Donna Laura's maid? That is maid and servant. Don Gonzalo's servant is Benito. Donna Laura's maid is Petra. What did Donna Laura feed the pigeons with? She feed the pigeons with breadcrumbs. So she throws the 3 handful of breadcrumbs. One for the sparus. Sparus, it means to say that the energetic birds. And the second one is for the gluttons. How much ever feed, it is not sufficient. They want more and more. And the third one is for the little ones. So what does she feed the pigeons with? She feed the pigeons with breadcrumbs. Who had occupied Gonzalo's bench? The bench was occupied by the three priests. The benches here are dashed. There is a blank here because each and every time he says public property. So the benches here are public property. What brought peace between Laura and Gonzalo? From the day they have met, it was a fight between Laura and Gonzalo, but a pinch of snuff brought peace between Laura and Gonzalo. What was Laura known in a locality? What was she known as? She was known as the Silver Maiden in her locality. What does the gallant lover toss up every day to the Silver Maiden or to Donna Laura's balcony? It is a bouquet of flowers. What right does Laura have to criticize his action? That is, when Gonzalo was cleaning his shoe with handkerchief, she questions. At that time, what was the reply from Laura? She says, it's a neighbor's right because he's sitting beside Laura. Mention one of the three birds for which breadcrumbs meant for. As I told in the beginning, 3 handful of breadcrumbs was thrown. That is one for the sparrows, for the gluttons, and for the little ones. So, mention any one they have asked. I have written all the 3 answers. In these 3, you can opt any one. Whom did the parents of Laura want her to marry? So, Donna Laura's parent wanted her to get married to a merchant. How old was Don Gonzalo when he went to America? So, what was his age when he first visited to America? He was 6 years old. Where did the young man took refuge after the duel? So there was a fight between Gonzalo's cousin and the merchant. So where did Gonzalo's cousin took refuge or took shelter? In Gonzalo's house. These are the few 1-mark questions. Let's move on to the 4-mark questions. What story did Laura and Gonzalo remember about the gallant lover? So they are asking about the story of Laura and Gonzalo about the gallant lover. Only about the gallant lover they are asking. They are not asking the story of his cousin and a friend. It's just about the gallant lover. What do they know about the gallant lover here? The ways of providence are strange. Laura's friend had told her in one of her letters the story or the sad love affair of her friend, and it was truly romantic. Gonzalo's cousin, the gallant lover, who would pass by horseback every morning down the rose path, and he would toss a bouquet of flowers where Laura stood near her balcony. In the same way, in the afternoon, while Gonzalo was passing on the toss the bouquet of flowers to the gallant lover. Then he would catch the bouquet of flowers, but her parents, whose Laura's parents wanted her to get married to a merchant. But what happened one night? The merchant came unexpectedly when Gonzalo's cousin had wanted under her window to hear her sing, to hear her song. He wanted to hear her song. So Gonzalo's cousin was near her window. At the same time, unexpectedly, the merchant was also over there. Then the merchant insulted his cousin, Gonzalo's cousin, and that started for the quarrel between the merchant and his cousin. So in this quarrel, the merchant was badly wounded, and later his cousin, where he was not ready to face the consequences, he has to hit himself for a few days and later to fly. This is what the answer you have to write for this question. Moving next, what account does Gonzalo give Donna Laura about his cousin's life after the death? So now Laura is questioning, or Gonzalo is giving an account of his cousin's death. After the duel, what happened to his cousin? That is what you have to write here. Laura Laurenti, cousin of Donna Laura, was called the Silver Maiden. She was very unfortunate and a sad love affair. Gonzalo told Laura that the gallant lover was his cousin. Laura is telling Gonzalo that they both wanted to marry each other, but her parents wanted her to marry a merchant, but she did not like him. One night, when his cousin waited to hear her sing, unfortunately or unexpectedly, the merchant was over there, and then they had a fight or they had a quarrel. So what happened? In the morning, his cousin hid himself and later to fly to Gonzalo's house for shelter because he was not ready to face the consequences. So his cousin has to take shelter in Gonzalo's house and later he flew away from that place. He expected the danger as he was fearful of the consequences of the duel with the person highly regarded in the locality. Who is the person highly regarded here? It is the merchant. Merchant is the highly regarded person in that locality. He was not ready to face the consequences, so he just hid himself. Gonzalo informed that his cousin had gone to Seville from his hometown and then came to Madrid. So first he took shelter in my place, then later he flew to Seville and then he came back to Madrid. And he also says that my cousin had written many letters to Laura, but she never answered at all. So he says he had written many letters, but he did not get any reply from Laura or from your friend. So his cousin had never forgotten her, and in desperate, he believed that he lost his love forever, and then he joined the army, went to Africa, and there in a trench he met a glorious death, grasping the flag of Spain, whispering the name of his beloved. So after that, when he got to know and when he thought that he lost his love or lost his beloved forever, he joined the army and there he met death. While dying, he just holds the flag of the Spain and he whispers his beloved name, that is Laura Laurentine. This was the account Gonzalo gave Laura about his cousin after the duel. So what happened? After the fight between Gonzalo's cousin and the merchant, that is the story you have to write for this question. How, according to Donna Laura and Gonzalo, the sad love affair of her friend and his cousin ended. So now in the previous question, it was only about Gonzalo's cousin. The account was given, the answer was given. Here in this question, it is about his cousin, a friend. You need to write both the answers here. They might ask only to give the account of Gonzalo's cousin or only to give the account of Laura's friend. But here they have asked the two questions together. The beginning answer will be the same of the previous question as I've discussed or as I've explained you about Gonzalo's cousin's account to Laura. So Gonzalo's cousin wanted to listen her sing. He comes near her window, but unexpectedly even the merchant was over there and the merchant insulted his cousin and there was a fight between the merchant and Gonzalo. In that fight, the merchant was badly wounded and here where Gonzalo's cousin was not ready to face the consequences in fear, he hid in Gonzalo's house and he later flew away and came back to Madrid. Where did he flew? He flew to Seville and came back to Madrid. After coming back to Madrid, he had written many letters to Laura, but he did not get any reply or any response to those letters. At last, he thought that he lost his love forever and then he joined the army. There he met a glorious death. Before dying, he just holds the flag of the Spain and whispers his beloved name. And next, it's about the Laura. What Laura replies in written for this. Laura says, even my cousin, she waited for the letters for days, months and years, but she never received any letters from your cousin. So what did he do? One late evening, she just went to the sea, wrote the beloved name on the sand. She sat on the rock and she was swept into the sea. This is how she lost her life. That will be the answer for this question. Moving on to the last one, how do Laura and Gonzalo conceal their identity? Again, you have to write the same thing, and at last you will write the both did not want to disclose their identity till the end of the day, and they just went back with their maid and the servant to their place, saying that they'll be back tomorrow. If it is a sunny morning, Gonzalo will obviously come with a breadcrumbs for the pigeons. I'll just read out the answer for this question. Gonzalo was the gallant lover of Laura, a beautiful and perfect figure. The story of their affair was romantic. Every morning, Gonzalo passed by the horseback down the rose path under her window and tossed up her balcony a bouquet of flowers which she caught. And later in the afternoon, when he would return by the same path, he would caught the bouquet of flowers she would toss him. The ways of Providence are strange. Her parents wanted to marry her to a merchant whom she did not like to marry. And one night when Gonzalo was waited to hear her sing, the merchant has presented himself unexpectedly. He had insulted Gonzalo and there had been a quarrel and later a duel. The merchant was badly wounded and Gonzalo had to conceal himself for a few days and later to fly. Gonzalo had gone to Seville due to fear of the consequences of a duel and then returned to Madrid. After coming back or after returning to Madrid, he had written many letters to Laura which was intercepted by her parents. That means to say that they both were separated from each other. Believing his love lost for him forever, he went to Africa, joined the army. There he met a glorious death in a trench, grasping the flag of Spain, whispering the name of his beloved Laura. Laura told Gonzalo that she had waited for news and no letters had come for days, months and years. Laura's friend waited for the letters from Gonzalo for days, months and years, but she never got any letters. One day she had left the house and had been to beach where her beloved had risked his life. She had written his name on the sand, as I told, and then sat down upon the rock, and the waves had slowly crept the rock and swept her out to the sea. Now, both knew that it was all a lie and they were discussing the romance of them in their old age. So, Laura and Gonzalo get to know whatever the story they have told about their friend, about her friend and about his cousin, it is a lie because they both are sitting alive in front of each other, but they don't want to disclose their identity. They want to remain as they are right now because they recognized each other and bid farewell just after Gonzalo stooped to pick up the flowers which Laura dropped. So before departing, as I told, before they departed from the park, Gonzalo just tried to pick the flowers which was fallen down, and Laura turns back and she says, yes, he is the one, and he says, yes, she is the one. But they never say that they are the one whom they had loved each other in their youth. But they'll get to know each other, but they don't reveal their identity. That's all about the play A Sunny Morning. Again, I'm saying from this chapter or from this play, you'll be having 2 questions for 1 mark and 2 questions for 4 marks. In my next revision class, I'll be discussing the poem When You Are Old. Until then, have a good day. Thank you.